Hello, dear polymer clay enthusiast. I'm Mihaela from Learn Polymer Clay, and in today's tutorial, I want to inspire you to make modern looking faux dichroic pieces that look a lot like the real thing. I'm working with black polymer clay that I have previously conditioned and that I passed through the setting number 2 of my Atlas pasta machine. And I've also prepared nail art foil in a gradient from gray, blue, pink to red. I intend to use mostly the blue and the pink areas. So I put the nail art foil on top of the clay, and I use my fingers to rub the nail art transfer into the polymer clay. Sometimes it works like a charm, sometimes you might need to insist in some areas. I say this very often, not all types of nail art foils transfer easily to polymer clay. So I used some scrap foil to decorate as well as possible my piece with nail art transfer. Then I used the blade to lift the piece from my working table, and I am going to use a double stamp with a leaf pattern, and I am pressing this stamp into the polymer clay. I use the roller to roll it well and to have a very good textured design onto the polymer clay. I noticed that there was some scrap foil on top of the piece, and I removed it. And then you'll just have to gently pull on the clay, stretch the clay, and do this gently. And I am going to stretch the clay until I am able to see the black clay underneath in some areas, not everywhere. Especially you'll see the black clay underneath in the recessed areas. So I will continue to pull on the clay, and you notice that the textures remains. The clay is still textured, but by stretching this clay, you are able to see the black polymer clay underneath, which is what we want when making faux dichroic pieces. So I have prepared the second piece of polymer clay, passed through the setting number 2 of my Atlas pasta machine, and then I used the beautiful Mandala floral stamp to stamp it. And this is going to be the back of the piece. I flipped it, and then I applied the textured clay with the nail art transfer, and then I used the very beautiful shield-like Lisa Pavelka cutter to cut out a beautiful shape for my piece. You'll have to smooth off the edges. And then I used the blade and I trimmed off. I've made like a V shape in the upper part of the piece to make it more interesting. And I decided to trim a little bit more. And I wanted to have this negative space in the upper part of the piece for more interest, and to give this pendant a modern feeling and a modern look. So you'll have to take the time and smooth off the edges. Then because they have this look of hammered metal, and they are not perfectly oval. They have a slightly irregular look, but I think this gives them a very modern look. And I decided to add 4 or 5 diamond painting drills on second thought, I think these pieces are very beautiful and colorful, and they don't really need um, embellishments. I bake the pieces for 45 minutes in the preheated oven. I tint my pieces. I put an aluminum disposable pan on top to protect these nail art transfers from direct heat. Then I let the clay cool down, and then I've used UV resin and a brush. But before applying the resin, I've made a supporting system for the metal components. I've used small balls of scrap white clay, and I've braced these metallic components up because I have to make sure that they are staying in place while I'm applying the resin and while I'm curing the resin. And I'm applying resin using a brush because I want to control the amount of resin that I am applying. And after applying the resin, it is recommended to use a heat gun and remove any air bubbles. You could let these pieces sit for a little moment and then check from the sides to see if you have gaps, meaning you have areas where you don't have resin or you don't have enough resin, and you can use the brush to fill up those areas. So before using the UV lamp to cure the resin, I'm making sure that these components are staying in place because they are going to be trapped inside the resin. So I have to make sure that they sit nicely, and I like the way they sit on the pieces. And then I used a pocket lamp to start the curing process, and I cured the pieces for 40 seconds. And in some cases, I even applied pressure on the metal element to make sure that it stays in place and it is going to be trapped inside the resin. And then I used my large UV lamp and I cured the resin, and these are the finished pieces, and I hope that you like this idea of modern looking pendants with a very beautiful and colorful faux dichroic effect. Thank you for watching the tutorial, and stay tuned for more inspiration for your work with polymer clay.